So Peter Green is, in my opinion, the greatest blues guitar player to come out of England in the 1960s. And today we're going to look at what I consider one of his finest solos ever recorded. This is my lesson for the solo from Jumpin' at Shadows by Peter Green. Let's get into it. So Peter Green got his start as the second guitar player in John Mayall's Blues Breakers, replacing Eric Clapton. He then went on to found the band Fleetwood Mac. He's a fantastic singer, songwriter, and guitar player, and really can handle a wide variety of styles. But his blues playing to me is really something special, and today we're going to dive into probably my favorite blues tune of Peter's. This is the tune Jumping at Shadows off my favorite Fleetwood Mac album, Live in Boston. So this tune is a little unorthodox in that it's an 8-bar form instead of the more common 12-bar blues form. And it has a different set of changes in the beginning of the solo section than the rest of the tune. But a lot of the lines and concepts we're going to discuss here work in just about any type of slow blues context. So to start out, I'm going to play the solo down from top to bottom. Then we'll dive into what's happening in the chord changes and cover some of Peter's signature lines and phrases. And if you'd like the full tabs and notation to this solo, hit the link to my Patreon site down in the description. What a great solo that is. Before we get into this, though, we've got to cover a little bit about what's happening in the underlying chord progression. So this tune is in the key of G, but the solo section starts on the 4 chord, C. And it goes through this cycle of chords that's kind of like a bridge section to the main part of the tune. Then in the second half of the solo, Peter plays over the main progression to the song. So I'm going to play down the rhythm part to the solo section now and put the chord names up on the screen. So this solo follows very closely to this chord progression, and it really happens in 3 different spots on the fretboard. It starts off down here around the 8th fret, then moves up to this position around the 12th fret, And finally, it ends up by reaching up here to around the 15th fret. And it moves back and forth between these three positions. Now you can actually play a lot of the same notes in each one of these spots. For instance, you could take the same lick and move it around between these three positions. For example, so a lot of the licks in this solo are derived from the major pentatonic scale, with a few extra notes added in for color. But it's a good idea to learn your pentatonic scale patterns in these different positions. That'll give you a complete picture of what's happening in each spot on the fretboard. So like I said before, this solo starts out over the 4 chord, the C major chord. Now we're playing blues in G, so we're thinking G major pentatonic blues phrases, but we want to target some notes that outline that C chord. And Peter does a beautiful job of that by using a C major triad along with the G major pentatonic for this first line. Right, so he's starting out by playing a phrase right out of the G major pentatonic scale, but then coming down on the notes G, E, and C, which are the 3 notes of a C major triad. Then he moves up here to the 12th fret position and plays another line that targets the C note, the root note of that chord, up here on the 13th fret of the B string. And then uses that note to play a bluesy phrase to come back down to the G major chord, which is the next chord in the progression. And this is something very characteristic that you might hear B.B. King play. Then he plays up here around the 12th fret in this G major pentatonic position, but sneaks in a few bluesy notes to give it a little attitude. Right, he's hitting that minor third and that flat 7 from the minor scale and adding that in with the major pentatonic blues stuff. From here, we go to the E minor chord, which is the next chord in the progression. And for this, he plays a really tried and true E minor pentatonic phrase right here in this position. The E minor pentatonic scale and the G major pentatonic scale share the same notes, but he really leans into that bend from D up to E to target the root note of that E minor chord. From here, we're back into some classic G major pentatonic phrasing around the 12th fret. He jumps up that big interval jump and grabs the high E note on the 12th fret of the E string and then jumps back down to the G string. So that's a pretty cool lick. Then we come up to the A major chord in the progression. This is the 2 chord, right, in this series of chords. And he outlines this chord in a really simple but eloquent way, just using this G major pentatonic box right here, by really just targeting the root note of the chord. Right, he's playing in that G major pentatonic position, but he's landing on that A note. And he kind of alternates between bending the A note and bending the D note. Then he plays a really cool phrase, probably my favorite lick of the whole solo, when it goes to the 5 chord here, the D chord here. He plays this kind of slippery, bendy lick. where he's starting with a pre-bent note, bending down from E to D, and then bending from A up to B, and then doing this cool little bend on the 12th fret of the G string with his first finger, and then right back into that G major pentatonic box with that little double step bend. It's almost kind of a pedal steely country kind of thing. It's very, very cool. So from here we move back to the main chord progression for most of the tune. We go back to the G chord, and the dynamic level drops down a lot here. If you listen to the original recording, the band really drops down behind him, and Peter makes some adjustments to his volume controls and kind of lightens up his touch and really plays some very nice, very dynamic phrases here. And to my ears, it sounds like he's moving back down to this 8th fret position. It sounds like he's playing on the thinner top 2 strings, and he plays this phrase. Right, a nice simple little bendy phrase using some of the same notes we were playing up here on the 12th fret. But this lick is bending from the note A up to B, and then with your pinky grabbing the note D on the 10th fret of the high E string. A really nice, very simple phrase. From here we move to another phrase that's very characteristic of B.B. King, down here in this position that uses some nice chromatic notes. Right, this is something a lot of people refer to as the BB box, where you're kind of playing around the major and minor pentatonic and leaning heavily on this note E, the 6th, the major 6th. And again, bending the note C ever so slightly, the way that we did up here. Right, so this is another great phrase that ties together what we played before. From here is where we make the jump up to the 15th fret, kind of jumping up the octave. So we're playing here, now we're moving up the octave, and he plays, again, a really classic signature blues phrase, starting with the G major pentatonic and then coming down by bending the flat 7 up to the root. So a little bit of major, a little bit of minor. From here, he does a really nice, very melodic move, coming down sort of like a G minor 6 scale. Right, just walking down flat 7, 6, 5, 4, flat 3, 2, 1, and landing on the 6. So all that together. From here we come back up, and he plays, again, sort of a combination of the minor and the major. Hitting that minor 3rd, and then coming way up here, right, and playing another really melodic phrase that's kind of playing down the scale. Then from here he hits this big bend from the flat 7 up to the root. This is a really special time in the original recording because this note really blooms and takes off. And he kind of picks up the dynamic level a little bit. But this lick is, again, a really classic kind of minor pentatonic blues phrase. We've kind of switched from the pretty bright major stuff to a little bit more nasty minor blues thing. So, right, so that's bending up from the flat 7, hitting the root on the high E string, coming down the minor pentatonic and kind of pre-bending that C note, bending it down to C, doing a little hammer-on pull-off down to the fifth, the 5. And then here we come back into some pretty major pentatonic stuff. Again, our nice bends here around the 12th fret position, bending from D up to E and from A up to B. And then finally, wrapping it up, we move back down here to the 8th fret position and play this little lick. Right again, which is another very B.B. King-esque phrase, using these chromatic notes, walking down from D to C, and then from B flat down to G. So B flat, A, G. And then ending by targeting the note D, which is the root note of the 5 chord, which is the final chord in the progression. All right, guys, so I'm going to put a link to the original recording down in the description. Definitely check it out if you haven't. This whole record, the Live in Boston record, is a fantastic album, a whole variety of different music and styles and some amazing guitar playing on this record. So definitely check that out. If you'd like the tabs, the notation, if you'd like this backing track to practice to, that's all going to be available on my Patreon site. The link is down in the description. It's only $5 a month, and you get tons of content to literally hundreds of lessons that I've done here on YouTube. So until next time, happy practicing and take care.